This is Peter Burns from Ambrosia Academy of Astrology, speaking about the Jupiter-Saturn opposition which takes place on the 28th to the 29th of March 2011. This cycle is between the two great chronocraters, the markers of time, Jupiter, which has a 12-year orbit, and Saturn, which has a 29.7-year orbit around the Sun. These two planets conjoin every 20 years. Their cycle is therefore 20 years, and they also oppose each other every 20 years at the halfway point in their cycle. At the present time, the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, it actually began in May 2000 at 22 degrees of Taurus, and the present series of oppositions is in the middle of this 20-year cycle. These oppositions, there have been three of them. The first was in May 2010 between the signs of Pisces and Virgo. Jupiter was in Pisces and Saturn was in Virgo. The second was in August 2010 between the signs of Aries and Libra. Jupiter was in Aries and Saturn in Libra. And the third, which occurs over the next 2 days, is in the signs of Aries and Libra at 14 degrees of each sign. Key words for these planets: Jupiter is associated with prosperity, wealth, gain, expansion, rise, boom, and Saturn with poverty, privation, loss, contraction. Jupiter is associated with credit and Saturn with debit. Jupiter with excess and Saturn with lack. The 20-year cycle is associated with the economic ups and downs. Beginning in May 2000, the cycle began at 22 degrees of Taurus. This here is a symbol for the conjunction, and this is a symbol for the opposition. These are standard symbols used throughout the astrological community. These symbols here, the two squares, represent the halfway point in this, the quarter point, I should say, in the cycle, and the three-quarter point. It forms a 90-degree angle, which is called in astrology a square, to the original beginning point. The first is a waxing square when the expansion phase of the cycle, which is the Jupiter phase. Then we have the contraction phase, which is dominated by the qualities of Saturn. This is a graphic of the cycles since 1860, 7 cycles since 1860. All of them 7 completed cycles. The last cycle, of course, beginning in the year 2000, is only halfway through its cycle. It's not complete, so I can't describe that to you. 1860, I should say. Here we have the cycle. These measurements here are measurements of economic distress, which includes factors such as unemployment, inflation, etc. And we can see the higher that they are, the more distress that there is. So this particular year here is 1873, and this here is 1874. We can compare those 2 years to perhaps years back here, such as 1862, and other years like that. We can see it's much higher. So what I've done, the purpose of this particular graphic is to compare the waxing phase with the waning phase. And we can see, or at least to my eye, the waning phase in this first cycle is greater, at least the peaks of these measurements of economic distress are greater than the waxing phase, which don't show the same degree of distress. Again, for the second cycle, I see this being as more distressed in the second half of the cycle than in the first. The third cycle is a bit more harder to discern, which is perhaps would still looks like the waning phase is somewhat more difficult. Same in this particular case. The fifth case, a bit harder to say. There's a big peak here. Certainly the last example is very difficult to discern, so I'd say there are 5 out of 7 of these were significantly more distress in the second half, the waning half of the cycle, than in the first half of the cycle. This particular graphic here is to do with the elements of the planets Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto through the years 2010 to 2016. This is the symbol for Jupiter, for Saturn and for Pluto. These three planets are used as the major economic indicators for cycles, economic cycles throughout the world. So we're looking at a generalized picture of Earth here. No particular country is this drawn for. So on the horizontal row for Jupiter, we have Jupiter in the sign of Pisces, 29 to 2010. 2011 it moves into Aries, and moves back and forth into Aries. Sorry, this is still 2010. It was in and out of Pisces, Aries, and now in 2011 it's in Aries before it finally moves into Taurus. Now the blue signs and the green signs, which are water and earth, are more associated with my research with the economy going down rather than the economy going up. And the fire signs, that's red, and the yellow, which is air, when we see a preponderance of the yellow and the red, we see the markets moving up, and when we see a preponderance of the blue and the green, the markets move down as a rule. And so here in these years here, that's 2013 and 14, and a portion of 2015, we see the likelihood or the possibility of a big downward trend, followed sharply for a big upward trend to some degree in 2015 before again it moves down again. This is a graphic of the actual horoscope for Jupiter opposite Saturn, done for London, so just to give it a place, but there's no houses in this chart. The moon is quite precise at 5 degrees of Aquarius, and it just shows the opposition between the sign of Aries and the sign of Saturn. So as a general rule, this particular cycle that we're moving into, it looks like we're moving into a downward phase over the next 10 years for the economy and the markets in general. My specialty is in running correspondence courses. I send lessons by email. I award certificates and diplomas for work that's completed and well done and assessed. I run a course in predictive astrology, which is otherwise known for its proper term as horary astrology, which is a rather antique word, but nowadays we'd call it predictive astrology, which is the form of astrology in which any question can be answered at any time. We don't need a natal chart. So we don't need accurate natal charts for this particular form of astrology, which makes it a lot easier than, say, natal astrology, which is highly dependent upon a very accurate time of birth. Also do an Astrology Foundation Studies Certificate, as well as a palmistry diploma. If you're interested in any of my courses or would like to contact me, this is my web address, astrologycoursesonline.com, and you'll find a contact tab on that page with my email address. Many thanks for your time.